The sky bled grey as the rain fell in slow, deliberate drops, soaking the streets of Willoridge. Emily Carter pulled her coat tighter, her breath fogging up as she rushed toward the library's rear exit. Her shift had ended, but the storm had grown heavier, the kind that made everything feel a little more fragile. Just as she reached for her umbrella, she saw it. A figure lying by the alley wall, motionless, his body half hidden beneath a collapsed cardboard box. Her heart skipped. In this forgotten corner of town, strangers meant stories and danger. She hesitated for a beat, mind spinning with all the reasons not to get involved. But something about the scene gnawed at her. The way his hand was curled protectively around something invisible, the way his coat didn't quite fit. Against her better judgment, she stepped closer, calling out softly, "Hey, are you all right?" No answer. She crouched, checking for breath. There it was, faint, shallow, but real. She shook him gently, and his eyelids fluttered. "You shouldn't be out here," she muttered more to herself than to him. His voice was hoarse when it came, barely audible through the wind. "Did I miss the bus?" She blinked. That wasn't what she expected. His eyes were open now, pale blue and oddly calm, despite the dirt smudging his cheek and the cut on his brow. "Can you stand?" she asked. He nodded, but when he tried, he winced and collapsed against the brick wall again. "Okay, that's not happening." She took a breath. She could call someone, or she could do what her instincts screamed against: help. 20 minutes later, she had him wrapped in a blanket on her living room floor. The old heater buzzed weakly, casting a tired orange glow around them. He hadn't said much during the walk, only that his name was Nathan and he just needed a place to stop. Emily watched him from across the room, arms crossed. "You don't look like someone who's used to sleeping on sidewalks," she said bluntly. His lips twitched. "I'm still getting the hang of it." That almost sounded like a joke. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked, but he only shook his head. Silence fell between them. Emily stood, restless, then disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a chipped mug. "It's not great coffee, but it's warm." He took it without a word, cupping it in both hands. "Thanks," he murmured. There was something oddly refined about him. The way he sat, the way he thanked her. Like someone who didn't belong here, like someone pretending not to be seen. That night, Emily barely slept. She'd taken a stranger into her home, a man with secrets written all over his tired face. But fear wasn't what kept her awake. It was curiosity. Who was this man who smelled of pine and rain but spoke like he'd read every book in her library? At dawn, she peeked into the living room. He was still there, awake, staring out the window as if searching for something long lost. "You didn't sleep," she said. He turned, offered a tired smile, didn't want to waste the warmth. The next morning, Nathan moved slowly, careful not to touch anything he hadn't been offered. He folded the blanket with precision, placed the mug in the sink without a sound. "I'll be out of your way soon," he said, as if he'd rehearsed it 100 times. "No rush," Emily replied, "but I do want to know who you really are." His gaze lingered on her face. "For a moment too long. Someone who used to matter," he said, and that was the end of it. For now. Days passed, and Nathan didn't leave. At first, Emily told herself it was temporary, but then she started leaving a second mug beside the coffee pot, started asking if he wanted to join her for dinner. He never took more than he needed, never asked for anything, but slowly, quietly, he began fixing things. The creaky kitchen cabinet, the flickering hallway light, the broken drawer she'd been meaning to throw away. "You're handy," she commented once. He shrugged. "Used to build things." Each time he shared a piece of his past, it was vague. "I traveled a lot. Worked with my hands. People used to call me the fixer." Emily didn't press, but the questions multiplied. How could a man who walked like a soldier, spoke like a professor, and worked like an engineer be homeless? He didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't even carry a phone. He read her books like they were air. He folded his clothes with military precision. Nathan Reed was a contradiction wrapped in mystery. One evening, Emily caught him staring at a photo of her father, a firefighter who had died in the line of duty. "He looks like someone who knew what mattered," Nathan said. She nodded. "He was quiet, but he always showed up." Nathan didn't say anything for a long time. Then quietly, "That's rare." Something flickered in his expression. Regret? Longing? She couldn't tell. And she didn't ask, because deep down she knew the answer would only raise more questions. The first real crack in Nathan's mask came on a Wednesday. Emily came home early from work and found him typing on her old laptop. He didn't hear her at first, too focused on what he was doing. When she cleared her throat, he froze. "I was just looking through my files," she snapped. He stood, palms up. "No, I was just fixing it. It was slow. I didn't touch anything." She looked at the screen. It was open to a spreadsheet. Her resume reformatted, reworded, perfected. "What is this?" she asked. "You corrected my resume?" He nodded. "You're too qualified to be invisible. I just helped." She wanted to be angry, but the truth was it looked better. "Next time, ask," she said. He nodded again. "Next time." That night, she found a note beside her pillow. "You're more than you believe. The world just hasn't caught up yet. No name, no explanation, just that." Later that week, Emily passed a bookstore downtown and stopped cold. In the window was a biography, glossy, gold-lettered, with a face she recognized. Not entirely, but enough. She leaned closer, heart racing. The title read, "The Rise and Disappearance of Nathaniel Reeves, Tech Visionary Turned Ghost." Her stomach dropped. She opened her phone and searched. Dozens of headlines. CEO vanishes after billion-dollar fallout. No trace, no explanation. And the face? It was Nathan. Or at least, who he used to be. She walked home in silence, the article still open in her trembling hand. Nathan was sitting on the porch when she arrived, sipping tea like he belonged there. "You lied to me," she said, holding up the phone. He didn't even flinch, just looked at her, eyes full of stories he hadn't told. "Yes," he said simply, "because the truth would have scared you away before you ever knew me." And just like that, everything shifted. Emily wasn't sure if she was terrified, or finally ready to know everything. The silence between them hung heavy, thicker than any storm Emily had weathered. She stood in the hallway, fingers clenched. Around her phone, its screen still glowing with Nathan's past. He didn't move, didn't offer excuses or explanations. Just sat there on her porch, watching her like someone who had already lost everything once and knew better than to run. "So, you're Nathaniel Reeves," she said, the name tasting foreign on her tongue. "The one who vanished." He nodded, slowly. "That's who I was, not who I am." Emily didn't know what she expected. Denial, maybe, or a nervous laugh. What she got was disarming honesty. It made her angrier. "You let me believe you were just some guy," she snapped. "A stranger with nowhere to go." He looked away. "That wasn't a lie." She laughed, short, bitter. "No, because billionaires usually crash on library assistants' couches." Nathan stood then, not towering, but steady. "I didn't come here to use you. I came here because I had nowhere left to hide." "I don't understand," she said. "Why would someone like you end up like this?" Her voice faltered, unsure if she was accusing or simply trying to grasp the impossible. Nathan sighed, running a hand through his overgrown hair. "Because sometimes, when the world takes everything from you, the only way to breathe again is to disappear." Emily blinked. That's poetic and also incredibly vague. He cracked a ghost of a smile. It's all I can give you right now. They sat across from each other later, coffee cups between them like fragile peace offerings. Nathan spoke in fragments, about partners who turned, about deals twisted behind closed doors, about headlines that told stories he couldn't control. I built a world I no longer recognized, he said. Then it collapsed, and I let it. Emily listened, skeptical but captivated. There was something heartbreakingly real in his words, in the way he owned his fall without asking for pity. Why here? She asked. Why me? Nathan hesitated. I passed through Willow Ridge years ago, remembered the library. I remembered peace. And you looked like someone who hadn't given up yet. That made her chest tighten. She didn't like being someone's lifeline, but she also didn't like the idea of him wandering alone, hunted by ghosts he wouldn't name. Are they looking for you? She asked. Your enemies? Nathan's eyes darkened. Some are, but they don't know I'm alive, and I'd like to keep it that way. Emily leaned back, her thoughts racing. Was she harboring a fugitive, a fraud, or just a man too broken to fix himself? Whatever he wasn't dangerous, not to her, at least not in the way that mattered. You should have told me, she said finally. I deserve to know. Nathan nodded. You did. I was. Just afraid that once you knew, you'd stop seeing me as anything more than a headline. Her heart stung at that, because part of her already had. The next morning, Nathan was gone. Not his things, just him. His coat still hung on the hook, his shoes by the door. Emily's stomach dropped, and she stormed outside, her breath catching in the cold air. She found him in the alley, hands in his pockets, staring at the bricks like they were sacred. I thought you ran, she said, breathless. He turned. I did, years ago. I just stopped moving last week. That answer, infuriatingly cryptic, only made her more confused and more invested. When they returned, the tension didn't dissolve, but it softened. Emily handed him a notepad. Write it down, she said. Whatever you can't say. Out loud, he stared at it like it was a loaded gun. I don't know if I can. She folded his fingers around the pen. Try. Over the next few nights he did. Pages filled with messy cursive, half-memories, names crossed out and rewritten. It wasn't a full confession, but it was something. And Emily, against all better judgment, kept reading. In one entry, he mentioned a man named Marcus Layton, his former business partner. He's the one who sold me out, Nathan told her. And now he's CEO of the company I built from scratch. Emily bit her lip. Does he know you're alive? If he does, Nathan said, he's pretending not to, which means he's planning something. Emily stared at the page. Like what? Nathan's silence was chilling. Whatever it is, it'll hurt a lot of people if it works. Emily knew then she was already in too deep. She couldn't unknow what she'd learned. Couldn't look at Nathan and pretend he was just a houseguest anymore. He was a storm barely contained in a fragile disguise, but the part that scared her most. She wasn't sure she wanted him to leave. So what now? She asked. You wait here while your past catches up? Nathan shook his head. I don't wait, I plan, and when I'm ready, I go back in. Later that week, Emily's boss handed her a flyer about a networking event for local tech professionals. You should go, he said. Make connections. She almost laughed. What connections could she possibly need? But something tugged at her. That night she showed Nathan. He went still. This logo, he said, pointing. It's a shell company, one Marcus used for off-the-record deals. Emily's blood ran cold. So if I go, you'll be walking into a room full of secrets, Nathan finished. Maybe that's exactly what we need. Emily agreed to go, not because she was fearless, but because she didn't want to keep being someone who watched from the sidelines. She had spent years filing books others had written, guiding lives through aisles of paper and ink. Now she was part of a story that wasn't on any shelf, and she was ready to turn the page. As the night of the event approached, Nathan began to change, not drastically, but enough for her to notice. He trimmed his beard, stood straighter, spoke with more certainty. It was like watching someone remember who they used to be. "Are you sure about this?" she asked as they planned. He didn't answer right away. "No," he said, "but I am sure about you." And that, strangely, was enough. The night before the event, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching the fog roll in over the rooftops. Somewhere in the distance, a train groaned to life. Nathan joined her, his presence quiet but comforting. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she said, "don't disappear again." He looked at her, eyes unreadable. "I won't. Not unless you ask me to." She didn't. Not that night. Not ever again. The building loomed above them like a monolith, sleek glass, reflecting a city trying too hard to forget its shadows. Emily adjusted the collar of her borrowed blazer, her fingers trembling just enough to betray her nerves. Beside her, Nathan was transformed, clean-shaven, hair combed back, wearing a charcoal grey suit that fit like it remembered him. He didn't just look the part, he embodied it. Emily exhaled slowly. "You're not Nathan right now, are you?" His eyes never left the entrance. Not tonight. Inside, the event pulsed with artificial warmth, chandeliers glowing above sharp suits, murmurs of money, ambition, and carefully rehearsed laughter. Emily clutched her name badge like it might anchor her to reality. Emily Carter, Tech. Outreach Associate, it read, a fabricated role vague enough to avoid suspicion. Nathan moved beside her like smoke, present but never still. He whispered, "Marcus won't recognize me unless he looks hard. We just need to blend, listen, collect." Emily nodded, her throat dry. "And if someone does recognize you?" Nathan's smile was tight. "Then we make them doubt it." They split up naturally, her near the booths, him near the bar. Emily watched him from a distance as he slipped into conversations like he belonged. She wasn't sure what was more unsettling, how good he was at this, or how comfortable he looked. A man erased from the world, navigating it like a native. Every gesture, every glance felt deliberate. She turned away, focusing on her role. Be curious, be quiet, be forgettable. She drifted toward a corner booth displaying marketing materials for Hensley Tech Solutions, a name she didn't recognize. But Nathan had marked it in red on the flyer. "They're one of Marcus's fronts," he had told her. "Watch for inconsistencies." The rep manning the booth was slick, maybe mid-30s, all teeth and too much cologne. "Interested in future-focused security?" he asked. Emily smiled politely. "I'm more interested in past security breaches. Helps predict the future, don't you think?" The man blinked. "Excuse me?" "Nothing," she said, backing away. Elsewhere, Nathan locked eyes with someone he hadn't seen in years, Elena Marlowe, his former communications director. She was older, sharper, but still carried that glint of calculation. Her brows furrowed for a second, recognition trying to surface. Nathan turned away first, blending into a group of investors. He couldn't afford confrontation, not yet, but Elena's gaze followed him like a shadow. Across the room, Emily sensed the shift in energy. Something or someone had changed the air. In the lounge near the restrooms, she spotted a laptop left unattended on a small table. The screen was still on, a document open. Meeting notes. Her heart pounded. She glanced around, no one in sight. She sat, casually pulling the laptop closer, scanning the text. It was a schedule. Marcus was listed for a private boardroom discussion at 9:15 p.m. Topic: Asset reallocation. Attendees: unknown. She quickly snapped a photo with her phone. Heart hammering. This was the thread they needed to pull. Emily found Nathan by the far wall near the catering table, mid-conversation with a woman in pearls. She touched his elbow gently. "We need to talk." He excused himself and followed her to a quieter corner near the emergency exit. "I found something," she said, showing him the photo. His eyes scanned it fast. "This is it. He's starting the shift tonight." "Can we crash it?" she asked. He smirked. "Not without a plan or a badge." "Then we make one," she said, surprising herself. Minutes later, Nathan was printing a forged access badge from his hidden drive in the car. Emily stood. "Look out," her breath frosting in the night air. "You're really doing this," she murmured. He glanced at her. "We're doing this." The way he said we made something in her chest tighten. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming control of his name, of her purpose, of something they hadn't named yet. The badge slid out, freshly printed. "Let's go interrupt." A board meeting. They slipped past the velvet ropes and down a side corridor. Nathan walked with purpose, badge clipped to his lapel, Emily trailing just behind, carrying a tablet for cover. 2 security guards passed them without pause. At the boardroom door, Nathan paused, voices inside, laughter, and then Marcus's unmistakable tone, rich, cocky, in command. "This will go through. Once it's done, no one will remember. Nathan Reeves, he'll be a footnote, a ghost." Emily felt Nathan stiffen beside her. His jaw clenched. His hands were steady. They didn't enter. Not yet. Instead, Nathan pulled out a tiny recorder from his coat pocket, pressed it flat against the door. "Let them say everything," he whispered. "They always do." Inside, the conversation continued. Details of transfers, names of silent investors, mentions of offshore accounts. It was more than they'd hoped. "This is enough to crack it open," Emily whispered. Nathan nodded. "We just need to get out clean." But as they turned to leave, the door opened suddenly. Standing there was Elena, expression unreadable, eyes locked on Nathan. For a moment no one moved. Then, softly, "It is you," she said. Nathan said nothing. Elena stepped forward, blocking the hall. "You should leave, Nathan. Before they see you." "They already have," he replied. "They just don't know it yet." Emily moved closer to him. Elena's gaze shifted to her, then back. "She's part of this?" Emily raised her chin. "I am." Elena's lips curved. "Then you're in deeper than you know." "Why help us?" Nathan asked. "I'm not," Elena said. "I'm warning you. There's more than Marcus in that room. There are people who don't need headlines to make you disappear." Nathan's jaw twitched. "Then I guess we disappear first, on our own terms." Elena didn't stop them as they walked away, but her words followed them like smoke. As they exited the building, Emily turned to him. "Do we have enough?" He looked down at the recorder. "Enough to start a war." That night, back at her apartment, Emily replayed the audio in pieces. Every line, every name, they were threads leading to something big, something dangerous. "What now?" she asked. Nathan sat on the couch, looking more tired than ever. "Now we gather proof, real proof, something that won't just expose them, but make them fall." She exhaled. "And when we do?" Nathan's answer was almost a whisper. "Then I stop running, for good." But neither of them saw the figure across the street, watching from behind the wheel of a black car. A phone was raised, a photo snapped, and somewhere, far from Willow Ridge, another piece of the game was about to move. Emily never knew how. Silence could feel so loud until the night after the event. The apartment was dimly lit, filled with the soft hum of her heater and the distant ticking of the old wall clock. Nathan sat at the table, reviewing the audio files again, eyes flicking, from her laptop screen to the notes he had started scribbling on napkins. His calm was deceptive, every movement calculated, precise. "They were too confident," he said suddenly. "They've done this before." She sat across from him, arms wrapped around her knees. Do you think they know it was you? He paused. Not yet, but Elena's warning means they suspect something. Emily's stomach twisted. And the man in that room, Marcus, what's his endgame? Nathan looked up, his eyes shadowed. He wants what I built without the burden of my name, and he'll destroy anyone who reminds the world that I'm still breathing. The next morning, the first sign of trouble came quietly. A letter, slipped under the door, no return address. Emily picked it up, opened it carefully. Inside was a single printed line. You're playing with fire. Walk away before it burns. Her breath caught. Nathan, she called. He read it in silence, then folded it slowly, his expression unreadable. They're getting nervous. That's good. Emily shook her head. That's not good. That's dangerous. Nathan didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat by the window with a notebook, sketching out a timeline. Dates, names, account movements. Emily woke once to find him still there, a coffee gone, cold at his side. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered. He didn't look up. I do. I just don't want to. Those 6 words softened something in her that had been hard for too long. She crossed the room and laid her hand on his shoulder. Then don't. 2 days later, Emily got a job offer from a temp agency she'd registered with months ago and forgotten. Tech assistant at Solux Systems, the recruiter said. Starts Monday, good pay. Her heart skipped. The name was familiar. Nathan confirmed it. One of Marcus's affiliates, probably part of the laundering loop. She hesitated. You think they're hiring me because of you? Nathan shook his head. I think they don't know who you are yet, which makes you the perfect ghost. Emily took the job. Her days became surveillance missions. Fake smiles, soft footsteps, memorized routines. She noticed things quickly. Untraceable USBs passed between hands, password-protected folders named after months, briefcases that never stayed in one office for long. She recorded what she could on a burner phone Nathan gave her. Every night, she'd upload the data, and he'd pore over it with silent intensity. The walls of her apartment turned into a map. String lines, notes, red circles, a war room disguised as a home. One evening, after a long shift, Emily returned to find Nathan pacing. Someone accessed your personnel file, he said. The IP address traces back to a private server in Zurich. That's not routine. Emily's chest tightened. They're on to me. Nathan nodded grimly. They're watching. Not acting. Yet. She sank onto the couch. I'm not ready to run. He sat beside her, not touching but close enough. Then we fight smarter. And faster. The next step came from a forgotten place. A contact from Nathan's past. A systems analyst named Rowan who once saved his company from a massive breach. Nathan called in a favor. Rowan agreed to meet in secret 2 towns over. The meeting was tense. A parking garage, 3rd level, early morning fog cloaking their breath. You've stirred something big, Rowan said, handing over a hard drive. Inside are backups. Files Marcus thought he deleted. You'll need them. That night, they reviewed the drive. Emails, spreadsheets, voice memos. But one folder stopped them cold. Project Sundown. Emily opened it. It contained profiles, surveillance files, including one labeled Emily Carter. She read it in silence, blood draining from her face. They know everything, she whispered. My school, my job, my routines. Nathan grabbed the laptop face stone. They marked you weeks ago. They were waiting for a reason. Emily met his eyes. Then we give them one they won't survive. In the following days, things escalated. A man followed Emily home. Too casual to be a coincidence. Nathan began rotating their routes, changing burner phones, sleeping with one eye open. They were hunted now, but oddly, closer than ever. One night, as thunder rolled outside, Emily turned to him. If this gets worse, she said. He cut her off. Then we face it. Together. She nodded, the word together echoing in her chest like armor. But as Nathan tucked her hair behind her ear, something inside him broke. A memory, sharp and unkind. "I can't lose you," he said softly. "Not after all this." Emily looked up. "Then don't shut me out. Not anymore." For once, he didn't. He told her about the night he disappeared, the helicopter crash staged by his board, the bribes, the silence. "They wanted me gone because I knew too much, and now I know even more." When she slept, Nathan stood at the window again. He saw a car parked too long across the street. A man stepped out, took a photo, got back in. He made a decision then. "We move," he whispered. "Now." He packed a bag, grabbed the drive, shook Emily awake. "They're here," he said. "We need to vanish before they get bold." She didn't argue. She grabbed her coat, her backup phone, and the list of passwords they'd collected. As they drove into the fog, Emily looked over at him. "Where are we going?" Nathan didn't blink. "To finish what I started." Behind them, in the abandoned apartment, the walls still echoed with the ghosts of a war only beginning, and ahead, a city Nathan had tried to forget and would now be forced to confront. The city Nathan once ruled looked different now, taller, colder, its glass towers gleaming like blades. Emily stared out the car window as they crossed into the downtown district. "This place feels like it never forgave you," she said softly. Nathan didn't answer right away. "It didn't, but I didn't ask it to." Their hotel was small and anonymous, tucked between a pawn shop and a shuttered jazz bar. No questions at the front desk, no records, just keys and silence. That night, they reviewed everything. The stolen files, the burner logs, the back channels. Emily worked with sharp focus, her exhaustion tucked neatly beneath adrenaline. Nathan watched her more than the screen. "You're getting good at this," he said. She looked up, eyebrows raised. "Is that a compliment or a warning?" he smirked. "Maybe both." For a moment, they just looked at each other, and for once, neither had to explain what they were feeling. The next day, they visited the remains of Harrow Technologies, Nathan's old empire, now under Marcus's rule. The building had been renovated, modernized, sterilized. Emily touched the brass nameplate beside the entrance. "This was yours." Nathan's jaw flexed. "No, it was mine. Now it's a monument to a lie." They didn't go inside, not yet. Instead, they walked the blocks around it, mapping exits, watching faces. Emily took pictures discreetly. "We'll come back," she said. Nathan nodded. "When we have teeth." That night, they met Rowan again in a bar, 2 districts away. "You're being watched," Rowan said without preamble. "I intercepted 2 communications pinging your burner. They know you're in the city." Nathan didn't flinch. "Let them know. I'm done hiding." Rowan slid a new device across the table. Sleek, black, encrypted. "This gives you access to their ghost servers. I coded it to mirror Marcus's credentials." Emily's eyes widened. "You can do that?" Rowan shrugged. "I used to build his firewalls." Back at the hotel, Emily booted the device. The screen flickered to life, revealing a digital fortress. She typed quickly, navigating deeper layers. "There's a schedule," she said. "A meeting at the Vale District tomorrow. Private, attendees hidden." Nathan leaned in. "That's it. That's where the signatures get confirmed." Emily zoomed in. "Wait, it's under your name. They're using your digital identity to finalize a merger." Nathan stood abruptly. "They're going to kill the company in my name." The next 24 hours were chaos. Emily forged clearance forms, designed digital aliases, and booked them as consultants, attending a security audit at the building next door. Nathan tailored the backdoor code for access during the overlap in staff rotation. "We'll get in, extract what we need, and ghost out." Emily stared at him. You do know this is insane, right? Nathan grinned. Of course, but I'm finally myself again. As the hour approached, Emily changed into a sleek grey blouse, hair pinned back, eyes sharper than they'd ever been. Nathan wore black, no tie, sleeves rolled, the image of a disruptor. They entered the building next door, passed scanners, nodded at security. At 2:14 p.m., they slipped into a maintenance corridor and emerged on the 18th floor, the heart of the deal. The conference room was glass-walled and sleek, filled with executives. And in the center, Marcus. Emily watched through the digital lens as Nathan recorded everything. The fake contracts, the signatures, the coded references to bribes. They're laundering through shell firms disguised as R&D, Emily whispered. We can blow this up. But then Marcus said something that made the blood freeze in her veins. And the girl, Emily Carter, she's our liability. She knows enough to collapse this. Find her, silence her. Nathan reacted before he realized, fist clenched, stepping forward. Emily grabbed his arm. Not now, not yet. He nodded once, jaw set. Let's go. They slipped back into the corridor, just seconds before a security guard entered. By the time they were back in the hotel, they had the footage, the files, and the motive. But the fear had changed. It was no longer abstract. It had a name. Hers. Nathan paced the room, fury etched into his movements. He said it like you were disposable, like you were inventory. Emily leaned against the wall. That's how they see everyone, even you. He stopped, looking at her. Not you, never you. She moved toward him. Then let's end this, not just for us, for every name on those files. He nodded slowly. We release it all. Full exposure, public, no shadows. They prepped everything, the footage, signatures, encrypted links. Nathan called a journalist he trusted from years back, one of the few who hadn't sold out. Emily wrote the summary report, clear, undeniable, elegant in its fury. As they scheduled the release, she turned to him. When this goes live, you can't go back. He met her eyes. I don't want to. She didn't answer, but he saw the fire in her expression, and it matched his own. They released the files at midnight. The story spread like gasoline. On dry leaves, headlines erupted within hours. Corporate giant implodes in massive laundering expose. Whistleblower revealed as missing CEO Nathan Reeves. Emily's inbox flooded. Nathan's face was on every news feed, but it wasn't over, not yet, because as the media firestorm roared, a single text appeared on Nathan's encrypted phone. Nice try. You only exposed the middlemen. Now we come for the rest. He stared at the message, then at Emily. This wasn't the end, he said quietly. It was the beginning. And outside their hotel, 3 black cars pulled to a silent stop, engines running in the dark. The knock came at 3:17 a.m., 3 sharp raps against the wood, too precise to be accidental. Emily froze. Nathan was already standing, phone in hand, voice low. They're early. The room felt smaller, suffocating. She grabbed her bag, slipped on her shoes. Back exit. Nathan shook his head. Blocked. They knew we'd run. Another knock. A pause. Then a voice, calm and clear. Mr. Reeves, Miss Carter, we need a word. Emily's eyes darted toward the fire escape. Nathan met her gaze. You trust me? She didn't hesitate. Always. He opened the window without a sound, helping her out first, then following. The metal stairs groaned under their weight, the alley lit by a flickering street lamp. Behind them, the door burst open. Boots thundered across the floor they'd just left. Nathan pulled Emily into a side path, heart racing. They're not just watching anymore, he said. They're hunting. They didn't go back to the hotel. They couldn't. Instead, they vanished into the skeleton of the city, abandoned. Buildings, closed subway stations, forgotten corners of a metropolis that didn't sleep but sometimes blinked. At sunrise, they found refuge in a shuttered bookstore owned by one of Nathan's oldest allies, a woman named Vera. She opened the gate without asking questions. "I knew it was just a matter of time," she said. "You brought hell with you." "Nathan." Vera was tough, wiry, and sharp-tongued. She gave them a backroom and strong coffee, no sympathy. "You've stirred beasts," she said, lighting a cigarette. "The people behind Marcus aren't boardroom criminals. They're something darker." Emily leaned forward. "Like who?" Vera exhaled smoke. "Old money, government adjacent. Men who don't lose, they erase." Nathan listened in silence. "Then we don't give them the chance." Emily didn't sleep. She combed through the files again, searching for anything they'd missed. At dawn, she found it. A name buried in an unrelated transaction, Dorian Kale. "Who's this?" she asked. Vera went still. Nathan's jaw tightened. The real man behind the curtain. Emily clicked the name. The search returned nothing. No photos, no records. Just ghost data. "He doesn't exist," she whispered, "which means he's the most dangerous man in the story." By noon, they had a plan. Nathan would meet Rowan again. The journalist was preparing a full feature to run across independent media platforms. Emily would stay hidden, track signals, and watch for digital footprints. "If we're separated," Nathan told her. "Don't. Wait for me." Emily grabbed his wrist. "Don't say that. We end this together." Nathan kissed her forehead, lingering just long enough. "Then don't disappear on me." The meeting point was a train station under construction. Rowan arrived with a flash drive in a hollowed-out pen. "The real files," he said, "with timestamps and source authentication." But he didn't come alone. 2 men followed him at a distance, too clean, too quiet. "You were followed," Nathan said. Rowan nodded, breath shallow. "I didn't have a choice. They know I helped you." Nathan took the drive. "You need to disappear." Rowan didn't argue. "Good luck," he said. "You're going to need more than truth." Meanwhile, Emily intercepted an IP ping from an untraceable server. It had triangulated their last location in under 5 seconds. "They're tracking burner signals," she muttered, "triangulating through satellites." She packed the EU laptops, destroyed 2 phones and ran. But on her way out, a man stepped in front of her. Tall, dark jacket, eyes blank. "Emily Carter." She didn't answer, just ran, ducking under scaffolding, dodging across traffic, heart pounding like a war drum. She reached the rendezvous point minutes before Nathan, ducking behind a dumpster, gasping. When he arrived, bruised but breathing, she collapsed into him. "They're here," she whispered. "They know." Nathan checked the drive. "Then let's give them something they can't delete." They entered Vera's hidden basement, a relic from Cold War days, and began uploading the final files. Encrypted, mirrored, unstoppable. "Once this hits," Nathan said, "the world changes." But as the final file uploaded, a message flashed on the screen. Connection interrupted. Then another. System breach detected. Emily's voice trembled. "They're inside." The lights flickered. The screen went black. Then a video played, grainy, shadowed, a man in a suit with his back to the camera. "You've made quite the mess, Mr. Reeves," the voice said. "But heroes don't win in this version. They vanish." Emily recoiled. "That's him. That's Dorian Kale." Nathan's fists clenched. He just confirmed his existence. Vera handed Nathan a phone. "Satellite line. Safe. For now." Nathan dialed the journalist. "They cut our access. Can you go live early?" The voice crackled. "Already did. Half the files are public. They can't stop it now." Nathan closed his eyes. "Then we just became public enemies." That night, the city lit up with news. Protesters flooded Harrow's headquarters. Investors pulled out. Marcus disappeared. But Kyle did not. His silence was louder than bombs, and Emily knew the final battle hadn't begun. It had only been scheduled. Outside, someone watched the bookstore from a black car. He spoke into a radio. "They've moved, but they'll surface again. When they do, we'll be ready." And inside, Nathan and Emily sat in the dark, hands clasped, knowing the wolves weren't gone, just waiting. In the days following the leak, Nathan and Emily became ghosts. Their faces were on every screen, their names threaded through headlines like bullets, whistleblower CEO and accomplice on the run, cyber vigilantes or criminals. Every gas station, diner and waiting room bore their images. They couldn't stay in one place longer than a few hours. Every step was calculated, every silence loaded. But they were still breathing, still together. The bookstore was abandoned now. Vera had vanished too, leaving a note. "You're not just targets, you're triggers. Whatever comes next, survive it." They moved through the city's veins. Maintenance tunnels, parking garages, rooftops. At night, Emily studied maps while Nathan ran trace blocks. Their bodies ached, but neither complained. "We're not running," Emily whispered once. "We're moving. There's a difference." Nathan looked at her and smiled, tired but proud. "You're not who you were." One evening, beneath the freeway, they met with someone unexpected. Max, a former Harrow coder turned crypto activist. He spoke fast, moved faster, but his intel was gold. "Kyle's people are losing control," he said, showing them a tablet. "Half their shell accounts froze when your leak went live." "They're panicking," Emily leaned in. "That means they'll lash out." Max nodded. "You've got a window, maybe 2 days. After that, things go dark." Nathan shook his hand. "Then we moved tonight." They made their way to an abandoned Harrow satellite office on the east side, one of Nathan's first builds, now left to rot. "No cameras, no guards, just silence," he said. Emily followed him through a rusted side door. Dust coated every surface. "Feels like a mausoleum," she murmured. "It is," Nathan replied. "This is where it all started. My first lie, my first deal." He paused. "Maybe this is where we finish it." Inside, they set up a crude workstation. Nathan tapped into forgotten servers, while Emily compiled every name associated with Dorian Kale. "He doesn't exist," she said again, "but his fingerprints are everywhere." They mapped out connections, tech firms, defense contracts, political donations. Every thread led to shadows, but one stood out: a shipping company, small, off-grid, but disproportionately funded. Emily's eyes widened. "That's where the money's going." Nathan's voice was grim. "And maybe where Kyle is." Emily's phone buzzed. An encrypted message from Rowan. "Final interview goes live at midnight. The world will know everything." She showed Nathan. He nodded slowly. "Then we don't hide anymore." Emily looked up. "What if we don't? Survive this?" Nathan turned to her, eyes fierce. "Then we make it count." She didn't speak. Just stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him, grounding them both in the only certainty left, each other. That night, they broke into the shipping company's headquarters. It was harder than anything they'd done. Motion sensors, biometric locks, armed patrols. But Nathan knew the system. He had built a version of it years ago. They made it to the data core, pulled the internal drive. Names, deals, payouts, enough to light a fire under Kale's empire. But then, an alarm. A silent one. Nathan froze. "They know we're here." They ran, back corridors, locked doors, forced exits. A bullet grazed Nathan's arm. He didn't flinch. Emily fired a stolen stun round at a guard, the recoil nearly knocking her over. "This is war," she whispered. "No," Nathan said, bleeding. "This is the reckoning." They escaped through a drainage shaft, wading through ankle-high water into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. Emily collapsed onto the sidewalk. Shaking, Nathan knelt beside her. "You okay?" She nodded. "No, but I'm alive." At their next safe house, a burnt-out motel off the coast, Nathan cleaned his wound while Emily watched the ocean. "We're not who we were a month ago," she said softly. Nathan joined her shoulder to shoulder. "No, we're better, stronger." She looked at him. "You still regret coming back?" He shook his head. "Only that I didn't find you sooner." She smiled faintly. "Flawed timing, our specialty." At midnight, the interview aired. Rowan's voice was calm, but the content wasn't. Names, corruption, Kyle, Nathan, Emily, proof, unedited, raw. The internet exploded. Some called them traitors, others heroes. But no one was silent. And then, a message on the private server. "Final move. You have 48 hours. After that, the board resets, permanently." Nathan stared at it. Emily read it aloud. "They're going to vanish the evidence. And maybe us." Nathan stood. "Then we vanish first, but on our own terms." Emily reached for his hand. "One last mission?" He nodded. "One final strike." The wind howled through the cracks in the wall, but neither of them heard it. They were already moving, already planning, already ready, because this wasn't just survival anymore. It was justice. They had 47 hours when the plan began. Nathan mapped every move like a chess game, each hour a piece sliding into place. "We hit the core facility," he told Emily, "where the purge will start. If we don't take it offline, they'll wipe everything, including us." Emily nodded, eyes locked on his. "What do we need?" He pointed at the map. "Access, diversion, extraction. One wrong move and we disappear without a trace." She smiled tightly. "We've made wrong moves before. We're still here." Their target was hidden beneath a research facility, disguised as a biotech hub. Above ground, clean walls, white coats, security badges. Below, servers humming like a heartbeat, storing everything Kyle never wanted seen. Nathan had helped design the blueprint 10 years ago, back when he believed in what he was building. "Funny how it ends where it started," he said, suiting up. Emily clipped a comm device to his collar. "Not funny," she replied. "Fitting." They contacted. "Max again." "We need a blackout," Nathan said. 4 minutes, just enough to get in." Max frowned. 4 minutes is nothing." Nathan's voice was steel. 4 minutes is everything." Max didn't argue. He promised the diversion and warned, "There's chatter. Someone inside knows you're coming. Be careful." Emily and Nathan exchanged a look. "We always are," she lied. They arrived under the cover of a rainstorm, fitting for what might be their last night. Emily entered as a janitor on the late shift, credentials forged from old employee IDs. Nathan took the underground route, a maintenance tunnel long forgotten, its access rusted but intact. The plan was simple. Emily would trigger an internal alarm upstairs, buying Nathan time to reach the mainframe. What wasn't simple was surviving it. At 10:43 p.m., the lights flickered. Max had done his part. Emily slid into a restricted hallway, swiped a stolen card, and hit the emergency override. Sirens flared, guards scattered, cameras rebooted on loop. And underground, Nathan moved. "I'm in," he whispered. Emily's voice came through his earpiece. "You have 3 minutes. That's all I need." He reached the server core, a monolith of blinking lights and digital breath. The files were there, the names, the orders, the contingency plans, and something else, a secondary drive labeled Legacy. He hesitated, then copied both. As he turned to leave, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Dorian Kale. "You never could leave well enough alone," Kyle said calmly. Nathan froze. "You exist," he whispered. Kyle smiled. "Of course I do. Power is never faceless, just forgettable." "You'll fall," Nathan said. Kyle laughed. "Maybe, but not tonight." He raised a gun. "You should have stayed dead." A shot rang out, but not from Kyle. Emily stood in the doorway, her hand shaking around the weapon. "Back away," she said, voice trembling. Kyle turned, annoyed. "Ah, the librarian." "I'm more than that," she snapped. "So is he." Kyle took a step, but Nathan lunged, tackling him. The gun slid across the floor. Emily grabbed it, breathing hard. "We need to go, now." They fled through the tunnels, Kyle unconscious behind them. "He'll come after us," Emily gasped. Nathan nodded. "Then we finish this before he wakes up." Back at their safe house, they uploaded everything. Max was ready. The files would hit 10 platforms at once, too many to erase. As they waited, Emily watched Nathan. "You okay?" He looked at her, haunted, but whole. "No, but I'm alive." When the leak hit, it was chaos. Kyle's network collapsed. Arrests were made. Hidden crimes exposed. Emily's name trended worldwide. Half villain, half heroine. Nathan's return shattered stock markets, but also rewrote truth, and Kyle vanished. Again, like a ghost refusing to die. They stayed off-grid for days, watched the world burn and rebuild from a distance. One morning, Emily stood at the edge of a lake, wind in her hair. Nathan joined her, silent. She turned to him. "We did it." He didn't smile. "We survived. It." She reached for his hand. "That's enough for now." But in a distant room, lit only by a single monitor, Kyle watched a paused video of them escaping. His eyes were cold. "Not over," he whispered. "Not yet." A message blinked on his screen. "Reactivation protocol ready." And in the quiet that followed, he smiled. The war was over, but the game had just begun. The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. No sirens, no screens, no clicking of keyboards, just the wind through pine trees and the creak of old wood. Emily sat on the porch steps, legs pulled in, a blanket draped around her shoulders. The world was on fire somewhere, but not here. Not yet. Nathan watched her from inside, unsure whether to speak. Some wounds didn't bleed. They echoed. "I don't miss the city," she said finally, eyes distant. "I miss not being afraid." Nathan sat beside her, his arm brushing hers. "You still are." She nodded. "Not of them, of what comes next." He looked away. "I was afraid for a decade. I built my life around running, but you turned and faced it. That's braver than anything I ever did." She didn't answer, just leaned into the silence again. Inside, Nathan kept scanning private networks. The chaos hadn't stopped. Arrests continued, boardrooms imploded. But Kyle was a ghost again. No transactions, no sightings, no chatter. "He's too quiet," Nathan said aloud. Emily didn't flinch. "He's not quiet. He's thinking." They both knew it. Men like Kyle didn't lose. They adapted and returned sharper than before. Emily began writing again. Not reports, not summaries, but reflections. Her notebook filled with lines like scars. We became symbols. But symbols bleed too. Nathan found one page torn and tucked away. It read, "What if the world forgets? What if it forgets why we did this?" He folded it carefully. "I won't forget," he whispered. One afternoon they received an encrypted email, unsigned. Just coordinates and a timestamp. "A trap?" Emily asked. Nathan stared at the screen. Or a confession. They debated all night, then decided together. "We don't hide," Emily said. "Not anymore." So they went. Middle of nowhere, a collapsed observatory swallowed by forest. When they arrived, a man waited. Older, gaunt, eyes burning with something between fear and loyalty. "I worked for him," the man said. "For Kyle. But not anymore." Emily stepped forward. "Why now?" The man exhaled. "Because you exposed him. And he hates being seen. You hurt his pride." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "And you want to help us, this is why." The man looked away. "Because I helped hurt people, and I want to die lighter." He handed them a small box. Inside, a flash drive and a photo. A child. "His son," the man said. "He's not just a machine. He has weaknesses." They didn't speak for a long time after he left. The photo stayed on the table untouched. Emily whispered, "If we go after his family, we become him." Nathan agreed. "But knowing he has someone, that changes everything." Now Kyle wasn't just a ghost. He was a man with something to lose. Later, Emily stared into the mirror. Her reflection felt unfamiliar, harder, older. "I didn't know I could become this version of me," she said quietly. Nathan stood behind her. "You didn't become someone else. You uncovered who you've always been." She turned, eyes wet. "What if I don't like her?" Nathan cupped her face gently. "Then I'll like her enough for both of us." The next morning brought a new threat. A friend from Rowan's circle messaged them. "2 journalists vanished. Both worked your leak. No trace. Digital wipe too." Emily's breath caught. Nathan stared at the screen, knuckles white. "He's retaliating, quietly, legally, no blood, just erasure." Emily shook her head. "He's rewriting the narrative." Nathan closed the laptop. "Then we write faster." They contacted independent publishers, filmmakers, even whistleblower networks. Emily gave her first on-camera interview, her voice trembling but her eyes steady. "We were never trying to be heroes," she said. "We just wanted the truth to matter again." The footage went viral, but so did the threats. The cabin became a fortress. Surveillance, backups, escape plans. But no fear, just vigilance. Emily found herself humming again, soft songs from childhood. Nathan caught her once, smiled. "You're healing." She looked up. "Or remembering who I was before all this." He nodded. "Then hold on to that version. Don't let the world take her again." As the sun set one evening, a drone passed low overhead. No markings, no sound, just a presence. Nathan watched it go. "He's watching us," he said. Emily joined him. Let him see we're still standing." They didn't run that night. They didn't hide. They slept. And far away, in a steel room lined with screens, Dorian Kale watched too, but this time he wasn't smiling. The tension arrived like a fault line, silent, invisible, but deep. It started with the smallest things. Emily speaking less. Nathan checking the windows more often. The calm of the cabin had become a cage, each creak in the floorboards a trigger. They weren't fighting the world now. They were fighting time, and the cracks it carved through people who'd survived too. Much. Emily read one of her own interviews online. The comments were brutal. "She's a puppet. This whole thing was a stunt." One even called her a traitor. She closed the page slowly. Nathan noticed. "Don't read those." She gave him a tight smile. Too late. But that wasn't what hurt. What hurt was how alone it made her feel, even sitting right beside him. Nathan tried to fix it, with plans, with technology, with movement, but no plan solved silence. "You're pulling away," he said one night. Emily didn't deny it. "I'm tired of being a symbol." He reached for her, but she stepped back. "I just want to be someone who doesn't have to look over her shoulder to breathe." He nodded. "So do I." But the world they lived in didn't grant that kind of peace. The next day, a package arrived. No return address. Inside, a USB and a single sentence typed on paper. "One of yours, one of mine." Nathan plugged it into an offline laptop, and they watched in silence. The screen showed footage of a journalist they knew, bound, bruised, alive. Then it cut to a surveillance clip of Vera. She was walking down a crowded street. A red dot landed on her chest for 3 seconds before disappearing. The message was clear. "They're escalating," Nathan said, his voice flat. Emily stared. At the screen, fists clenched. "He's trying to break us." She looked at Nathan. "And it's working." He didn't argue. He just sat down, suddenly exhausted. "We need help. Real help." But the list of people they could trust had grown painfully short. That night, Emily left a note on the counter. "I need a few hours. Don't follow." She drove to the edge of the city, to a place where she could be invisible. A church with no sermons, a library with no rules. She sat in the back, breathing for the first time in days. A woman beside her whispered, "You're the girl from The Leak." Emily didn't respond. The woman smiled sadly. "We believe you." And just like that, the weight lifted, even if just for a moment. When she returned, Nathan was waiting, shoulders tight with worry. "You okay?" She nodded. "I just needed to feel human." He exhaled. "We can't lose each other, not now." Emily stepped closer. "Then stop treating this like a mission and start remembering who we are." He pulled her close. "I never forgot. I just didn't know how to hold on." That night, they talked like they hadn't in weeks. About before all this. About dreams, about fear, about what came after, if after even existed. Emily told him about the books she still wanted to write. Nathan confessed he still sometimes dreamed of disappearing again, just vanishing into a name that didn't exist. "But then I wake up," he said, "and I remember you." And that, somehow, made the dreams easier to leave behind. The next morning, Rowan called. His voice was urgent. "New breach. They're planting evidence, framing you both for financial sabotage. They're rewriting the end of your story." Nathan clenched the phone. "Can you stop it?" "I'll try," Rowan said, "but it's coming fast." Emily looked at Nathan. "We need a counter-narrative." "We need proof," he replied. "Proof Kyle can't bury." They turned to the last name on their list. Someone from Kyle's inner circle, a fixer named Celine, ex-military, ruthless, but quiet. "She left Kyle 2 years ago," Nathan said. "If anyone knows where he keeps the kill switch data, it's her." Emily hesitated. "And if she doesn't want to talk?" Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Then we make her listen." They found Celine in a cabin deeper in the woods than their own, off-grid, fortified. She opened the door before they knocked. "I knew it'd be you," she said to Nathan. Her eyes flicked to Emily. "And the girl. Good. You'll both. Want to hear this?" Inside, she poured whiskey like it was water. "Kyle has a fail-safe," she said. "If he goes down, everyone tied to him burns too. Judges, CEOs, senators." Emily leaned forward. "Where is it?" Selena smiled. "Hidden in the one place he never goes, his past." They left with coordinates, a childhood home. A burned-out farmhouse 2 states away. Nathan stared at the map. "Why would he hide it there?" Celine shrugged. "Because no one looks for fire where everything's already ashes." Emily closed the map. "Then that's where we go." But as they packed, Emily paused. "What if we don't come back?" Nathan looked at her, voice quiet. "Then someone else will pick up the story." She touched his chest. "But I want it to be us." He placed his hand over hers. "Then, let's make it." And far away in a quiet room, Kyle opened a secure line. "They're coming," he said to no one. Then to himself, "Good, I've been waiting." The drive was long, through endless fields and forgotten towns, where time had rusted everything. Emily watched the landscape blur into memory. "Places like this feel like secrets no one asked for," she said. Nathan nodded, eyes locked on the road. "Because that's what they are. Places where the world forgets." The farmhouse appeared near dusk, crooked, scorched, but still. standing, like something that should have fallen long ago. They parked a mile away and approached on foot, breathing the scent of wet wood and old fire. "Why here?" Emily whispered. "Why hide anything here?" Nathan scanned the horizon. Because no one would think to look in the ruins of the man he used to be. The house groaned as they stepped inside, the floorboards weak beneath their feet. Dust coated everything, but beneath the decay, a trapdoor. It took 20 minutes to force it open. Below, stairs into darkness, lined with concrete and wire. Emily descended first, flashlight shaking slightly. "This doesn't feel like a childhood home," she muttered. Nathan followed. "Because it isn't anymore." At the bottom they found it, a sealed room, climate-controlled, cold. Servers blinked faintly in the dim glow. And at the center, a steel briefcase, fingerprint locked. Nathan stared at it. This is it. Kyle's contingency, every file, every failsafe, his empire in a box. Emily approached carefully. "How do we open it?" Nathan knelt. "We don't. We take it, and make the world open it for us." But just as he touched it, a speaker clicked on overhead. A voice, smooth as silk and twice as cold. "You really are predictable, Nathan." "Kyle." Emily froze. The room vibrated with his presence, even from afar. "You thought I'd leave it unguarded," Kyle said. "I left it here because I wanted you to find it, because I wanted you to see what you're really fighting." A projector whirred on. The walls lit up, video clips, each more horrifying than the last. Executions, bribes, child labor, false flags, all tied to Kyle's network. "This is the truth," he said, "and no one will believe it." Nathan stood slowly. "You're right. They won't believe you, but they'll believe me." Kyle laughed. "You think exposing me will change anything? I'm not the system. I'm just the mirror." Emily stepped forward. "Then we'll shatter it." The projector shut off. Silence returned. But it wasn't empty. It was waiting. They lifted the briefcase together, careful, reverent. "We need to go," Nathan said. But when they reached the top of the stairs, the house was no longer empty. 3 men stood in the doorway, suited, armed, silent. Nathan turned. "Back!" But it was too late. A gun fired. Emily dropped to the floor, gasping, not from a wound, but from shock. Nathan tackled one of the men, disarmed him with brutal precision. Emily grabbed the weapon and fired once, a warning. The attackers scattered. They didn't fight. They fled. They weren't here to kill us, she realized. They were here to watch us take it. Nathan's breath was ragged. Kyle wants it out. He wants the chaos it'll cause. Emily stared at the case. "Then what do we do?" Nathan hesitated. "We leak parts, only what we can verify. But the full release? That's a nuke." Emily looked him in the eyes. "So we aim it carefully." They drove in silence. The sun rose slowly, indifferent. At a roadside motel, they stopped. Nathan opened the case again, eyes scanning the data. "It's worse than we thought," he said. "He controls media, defense, education, everything." Emily exhaled. "He was the system." Nathan nodded. "And now we can break it." But Emily held up a hand. "We can't be the ones to do it all. We need allies, credible ones." Nathan agreed. "We go global, journalists, activists, former intelligence. We scatter it. Let the world fight back." Emily leaned in. "And us?" Nathan smiled faintly. "We disappear again, but this time we choose how." As they prepared the dispersal protocol, Emily paused. "Do you think he had a family? Like real ties?" Nathan looked at her. "He did once. Maybe that's why he became this, to protect something, or avenge it. Emily nodded slowly. But we're not him. No, Nathan said. We're what he fears. People who won't play his game. The final upload began. 20 servers, 10 countries, a dozen languages. Each key given to a different person, unknown to the others. No single point of failure, just truth scattered like seeds. And as they watched the progress bar climb, Emily reached for Nathan's hand. "This feels like the end," she whispered. He shook his head. "This is the beginning we never had." And in a tower far away, Kyle watched the signal flares go up. He closed his laptop, lit a cigar. "Well played," he murmured. But even he knew. His shadow was fading. The makeshift studio was nothing more than a cabin corner and an old laptop rigged to 6 firewalls. But to Emily it felt like a stage, a pulpit, a war drum. Nathan tested the microphone, then turned to her. "Are you sure?" She adjusted the camera angle, nodding. "If we don't speak now, they'll write the ending for us." He smiled faintly. "Then let's take back the pen." They went live at 7 p.m. global time. No countdown, no title card. Just a close-up of Emily's face, tired, scarred, unbreakable. "My name is Emily Carter," she began, voice steady, "and I've been called many things over the last few weeks. Whistleblower, traitor, pawn. But I'm none of those. I'm just someone who saw something wrong and refused to stay silent." Nathan joined her on screen. "And I'm Nathan Reeves. I built systems meant to empower people. Instead, they became weapons for those already in control. This isn't about one man. It's about a network, a blueprint, a disease in plain sight." They looked at each other, 2 survivors now shaping history. Emily continued, "Tonight, we release the final keys, not for revenge, for remembrance, so the world doesn't forget who let this happen." Screens across the globe lit up. Office workers in Tokyo paused. Hackers in Berlin cheered. College students in Sao Paulo started recording. And somewhere in the dark, Dorian Kyle watched too, his hand trembling, slightly on the armrest. "Clever," he whispered, "but too late." He sent a signal to an AI kill switch embedded in his deepest systems. But it failed. Because the last key hadn't come from Emily or Nathan. It had come from Celine, the woman Kyle once trusted. She'd uploaded the decoy files Kyle planned to erase, redirecting the purge onto his own infrastructure. In one stroke, his empire collapsed, not with a bang, with a broadcast. As servers fell, Emily read from one of the reports. Over 2.3 billion laundered through humanitarian fronts, 15 assassinations signed off under the guise of economic restructuring, dozens of officials complicit in global manipulation. The world gasped, some denied, others rebelled, but no one remained untouched. Nathan ended the stream with a message. "We may disappear after this, we may never speak again, but let this live beyond us. Let the truth outlive the silence." And they shut the feed down, not with fear, with resolve, the kind that echoed. The hours after were chaos. News networks scrambled. Governments fell into emergency sessions. Protesters erupted across continents. Whistleblowers stepped forward. And everywhere, people asked one question: how far does it go? In their cabin, Emily sat in the dark. "We're not safe," she said quietly. Nathan nodded. "We were never safe, but now we're heard." She smiled, faint and real. "Then I can live with that." He wrapped his arms around her. "We will live, somewhere, somehow." Outside, thunder rolled, not ominous, but cleansing. A new storm, not one they feared. The next day, the headline shifted, from chaos to hope, from scandal to consequence. The faces of victims, long silenced, began to reappear in stories. Justice systems reopened cases. And the name Dorian Kyle became a ghost story, spoken of in past tense. But no body was found. Kyle had vanished again, like smoke in sunlight. And while the world healed, Nathan and Emily disappeared too, not out of fear, but purpose. They knew the story wasn't just theirs anymore. It belonged to everyone. Months passed. Then, in a village by the sea, a woman with auburn hair opened a community center with free books and slow Wi-Fi. People said she smiled like someone who had seen too much and decided to make something better. Occasionally, a tall man with quiet eyes fixed the solar panels on the roof and stayed away from cameras. They never said their names. But every month, a new letter would arrive to a journalist, a student, a mother, a former soldier. Inside, files, proofs, truths, all signed with the same phrase, "Let the silence end." And across the world, whispers began again. Because the last broadcast had never really ended, the waves whispered to the shore like lullabies in a language long forgotten. Emily stood barefoot on the sand, eyes closed, listening not just to the sea, but to the stillness inside her. It was the first time she'd felt it, not safety, not certainty, but peace, a fragile, fleeting kind. The kind you didn't trust fully, but let yourself breathe inside. The town was small, nameless to most maps, held together by cobblestone streets and people who didn't ask questions. She taught local children how to write stories. Nathan repaired boats for fishermen who never knew they were being helped by a former CEO who once held nations in the palm of his hand. It was a strange life, but a good one. News still came, though slower now. Headlines less frequent, but more sincere. New transparency laws in Parliament. Whistleblower protections expand globally. CEO sentenced for corruption, unveiled in global leak. Nathan clipped a few and tucked them into a journal, never showing them to Emily. Not because he hid them, but because he knew she already felt their weight in her bones. One afternoon, a stranger arrived in the village, a woman in her 20s with sharp eyes and calloused hands. She asked about the center, about the books, about the woman who smiled too quietly. Emily welcomed her, offered tea, showed her the shelf labeled "Truth Never Dies." The woman nodded. "I heard a story once," she said, "about a girl and a man who brought down a ghost. Do you believe stories like that?" Emily's eyes didn't flinch. Some stories are realer than others. Later that night, Emily told Nathan. She knows. He didn't panic, just asked, "Did she seem dangerous?" Emily shook her head. "No, just awake." Nathan leaned back, exhaling. "Then maybe she's the next echo." That was what they called them now, echoes. People awakened by what they'd done, people who picked up the broken pieces and built something louder. Rowan sent them a message, just one sentence. "It's working, slowly, but it's working." Celine sent another. "He's still out there, but now he runs, not you." And in a way, that was enough. Kyle's shadow still lingered, but it no longer shaped their days. They weren't fugitives anymore. They were gardeners of a world reborn in fire. At night, Emily would write again. Not reports, not leaks, but fiction. Beautiful, painful, stubborn fiction. Her stories weren't about heroes. They were about ordinary people making impossible choices. When asked by locals why her characters always walked into storms, she smiled. "Because storms are where we learn who we are." Nathan rarely spoke of the past. But sometimes, while fixing an engine or rewiring a radio, he'd pause and stare into the distance. "Do you ever wonder," he asked once, "if we did enough?" Emily didn't answer right away. She looked up at the clear sky, then back at him. "We didn't fix everything, but we broke the lie. That's a beginning." One morning, a package arrived at the center. No return address. Inside, a photo of a small boy holding a kite on a hill. On the back, written in precise ink, "He'll never know what you saved him from, but I will. S." Emily's hands trembled. Nathan placed his hand over hers. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. They spent that evening walking the shoreline, the wind colder than usual. but not cruel. Emily asked, "Do you miss the noise?" Nathan smiled. "Sometimes, but this silence, we earned it." She stopped, watching him. "I'm not done, you know." He nodded. "Neither am I." They sat on a bench carved with local names and watched the stars. Above them, the sky was vast, too vast for one lifetime. But in their stillness, in their ordinary peace, Emily and Nathan had carved a space where truth had lived. And still, whispered forward, they hadn't ended the world's darkness, but they had lit a match, and the echoes kept spreading. Spring came like forgiveness, slow, cautious, but undeniable. In the village, children ran again through the fields, and the old man who never smiled finally did. Emily watched from the window of the community center, hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Nathan entered, brushing dirt off his jacket. "The solar panels survived the storm," he said. She smiled. "So did we." A letter arrived 2 days later. No return address again. But this one was different. Inside, a map. The location, Willaridge, a red mark over the library where Emily once worked. On the back, in fine script, "Some beginnings must be returned to before endings are complete." Nathan read it twice. "You think it's from him?" Emily shook her head. "No, I think it's from us, from who we used to be." They debated for a day, then, without more words, packed their bags and left the coast behind. The journey back felt like a memory replaying in reverse. The cities they passed had changed, some still bearing the scars of revolution, others blooming with new voices. But the weight was different now. It wasn't fear anymore, it was gravity. Willaridge was quieter than they remembered, more closed, more hushed. The library was still there, same bricks, same windows, but the inside had changed. The desk where Emily once sat had been replaced with a touchscreen kiosk. The warmth of paper had given way to digital chill. She stood still, letting the change wash over her. Nathan watched her, silent. In a forgotten corner, they found what they didn't know they were looking for. A single box, dusty, labeled Carter Archive. Inside, handwritten notes, book club sign-ups, an old USB drive, and a note in her own handwriting. Truth matters, even if no one listens at first. Emily closed her eyes. "I wrote that the day before I found you." Nathan smiled. "And I ruined everything." She looked up. "No, you woke everything." They left the library in silence, walking past the alley where Nathan had first collapsed. The air was warmer now, the wall cleaner, the ghost of that. Night still lingered, but it no longer haunted. "I was broken," he said. "That night." She nodded. "So was I. We just hadn't admitted it yet." They stood there for a long time, not needing to say anything else. Before leaving town, Emily left a new envelope in the library's donation box. Inside, a printed story titled "The Forgotten Light." No byline, just a dedication. "To those who fall before they rise, may you always rise." The librarian wouldn't recognize the name, but someone might read it. And that would be enough. That night, they stayed in a small inn just outside town. No cameras, no signal, just them. Emily laid beside Nathan and whispered, "Would you go back and change any of it?" He didn't answer at first. "Then maybe I'd fall a little slower, so you'd have time to catch me better." She laughed softly. "I think I already did." The next morning they stood on the edge of town, bags slung over shoulders. Emily turned back once, looking at the horizon. "This place isn't home anymore," Nathan agreed. "No, but it's where we found the pieces." She took his hand. "And we built something else." They didn't know where they'd go next. Maybe somewhere warm, maybe somewhere forgotten. But for the first time it didn't matter. The mission was over, the truth was out, and they had survived it. Not untouched, but unbroken. Somewhere, far from Willow Ridge, a child picked up a book left behind on a park bench. Inside the front cover, written in looping script, "Stories save us, even when we don't believe they can." The child smiled and kept reading. Back on the road, Nathan and Emily drove with the windows down. No more fear, no more hiding, just wind and sky and whatever came next. Because they weren't just survivors anymore, they were storytellers. The village they chose had no name on the main road, just a hand-painted sign and a tree older than anyone could remember. It wasn't on maps, didn't appear in search results, and that's why they chose it. Nathan stepped out first, surveying the field where the sea met the sky. Emily followed, a box of books in her hands. "Think we'll be safe here?" she asked. Nathan didn't answer, he just smiled. Safe enough to begin again. They bought a small house with creaky floors and a roof that sang in the wind. It had no locks, no alarms, just sunlight, silence, and the sound of pages turning. Emily turned one room into a library. Real books this time, no screens. A small sign by the door read, "Free to read, free to stay, free to speak." Children came first, then women, then old men with voices made of gravel and regret. Nathan built a workshop beside the house, fixed radios, solar lamps, tools. People brought him broken things, not just machines but memories. He didn't talk much, but when he did, it mattered. And slowly, the village began to breathe differently, as if truth itself had learned to walk barefoot again. They never used real names. The villagers called them the Quiet Ones. But everyone knew they had stories inside them, stories that bled and healed in the same breath. Emily began to write publicly again, under a pseudonym. Her work traveled across continents. One short story, "The Girl Who Didn't Run," was taught in schools 2 years later. One afternoon, a journalist found their village. He didn't come with a camera, just a notebook. He stayed for tea, listened, then left with a single quote from Emily. "We never wanted to be heroes, we just wanted to survive the truth." That was all he published. It was enough. Time passed differently there. Days bled into seasons. One morning, Nathan planted a tree in front of the center. "It'll outlive us," he said. Emily kissed his cheek. "Good. Let something rooted carry what we buried." That night, they danced to an old vinyl found in a market 2 towns over. No one watched, but somehow it felt like the world was listening. They received letters now and then, encrypted messages, quiet thanks, warnings too. Kyle had been seen in Brazil, in Montenegro, in no place for too long, but he was hunted now. Always moving, always shrinking. The legacy he tried to control had slipped from his fingers, and maybe that was punishment enough. Emily sat by the window one night, watching rain fall like soft applause. "Do you ever feel it's not over?" she asked. Nathan sat beside her. "I don't think it ever is. But that's not our part anymore." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Then what is?" He looked out at the center, its lights still on. "We hold space. For truth. For people. For peace." They never married. Never needed to. What they built didn't require a ceremony. It was a vow written in silence, in war, in whispered truths. A partnership not marked by rings, but by resilience. Years later, a child asked them, "Were you famous once?" Nathan laughed. Emily knelt to meet his eyes. "No, we were just tired of waiting for someone else to speak up." The boy thought about that, then nodded. "I think I'll speak. Up too." And he ran off, chasing a kite across the sunlit grass. Emily and Nathan stood at the edge of the hill, watching him go. 2 people, 1 story, still unfolding, still echoing, but finally, at peace. If you've made it this far, let us know what you thought about the story. Rate it from 1 to 10 in the comments. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you're not subscribed yet, don't forget to subscribe to catch all our upcoming stories.